Hey you guys, it's Monica and welcome back. Today I'm going to be showing you how I made this Lisa Frank inspired resin notebook. And so this is a 2020 Lisa Frank calendar that I picked up at the Dollar Tree of all places. And I wanted to use this picture that you see. This is from the month of July. And I wanted to like encapsulate it somehow, put it on a tumbler. I wasn't really sure. And so I decided that the best way to do it was probably in a notebook. And so I had kind of just picked a page, and this is the one that had like the most characters and everything on it, so that's why I picked that one. And so the first thing you're going to do in preparation for making this is you're going to take the sheet. I use an A5 mold, which is one of the larger molds, and I'm going to just place it somewhere on that sheet to get, you know, the characters that I want cut out. And I do recommend that you do this with like a laser jet and not like an inkjet, because if you use an inkjet, you risk getting a lot of bleeding when you put it in the epoxy. So you can do this with like any kind of printout or magazine clipping or anything like that, or even stickers. Just make sure they're not inkjet, make sure they are laser jet. So I'm gonna just line that up where I think it would be best suited, where I can get the most bang for my buck. And then I'm gonna actually just take a marker and just mark off where each corner is, for that way I don't have to try to hold the paper, tape the paper down, and risk accidentally pulling up some of the design when I take the tape off. So I'm gonna actually just mark it off on each corner, and I do 2 marks on each corner, one going horizontal and one going vertical, to kind of help me keep it square. So I was actually going to just use my scissors to cut, but right when I started, I'm like, oh my goodness, this is gonna be like front and center on a notebook. And so I actually pulled out my handy dandy paper cutter. So just making sure that everything is straight and even and square, I'm actually going to use the paper cutter instead. So if you don't have one of these, it's not that big of a deal, but just a note, you can, like, they're like $15 and you can use like the 40 or 50% off coupon at Michael's. So if you are interested in one, you can get one fairly cheap. But yeah, this way it just ensures that like it's like square and uniform. Since it's going to be like front and center on the cover, that's really important. I know me, I always cut crooked, so I make sure to use this. And then I cut a little bit in from my marks, just because I had to make sure I also took into account the holes that are in the mold for the rings. So just make sure you're taking that into account also when you're cutting, because you can see I cut technically around where the rings were on the sheet, the sample sheet that I used. So just make sure you come in just a little bit, not too much, but come in just a little bit to account for, you know, you having to put the picture in to the left, to the right of the rings. And so I'm just going to show you how that fits up, and you can see it fits in there pretty nice and snugly, and I still have space left for the rings on the left side. And so if you saw in the thumbnail, I actually have like a rainbow one too, and that's actually the back. And so I'm going to go ahead and I'll put the names of the glitter. All the glitter came from Nola Craft Culture, and I'm also mixing them with mica because I already did the red. And I will also put the names of all of the micas that I use, which all came from Nurture Soap. Highly recommend Nola Craft Culture, highly recommend Nurture Soap. And so I could have just did the glitters, but I really wanted it to like stand out and be bold and colorful, and so that's why I chose to also put the mica in with the accompanying matching color of glitter. So again, you don't have to do the mica, it's totally optional. but you just risk there being like more clear spaces if you don't put enough glitter in it. It's not that densely packed. I didn't want to have to use too much glitter, and so the mica definitely helps with that if you don't want to too densely pack the glitter. Because if you also too densely pack the glitter, you risk it being lumpy. So just something else to keep in mind. It's just a bunch of little factors, but you know, be your creative self is really what it all comes down to. And so I'm gonna just speed through the next part, and you guys can just watch me mixing everything all up. And so when it comes to putting it in the mold, really it's your preference. I didn't have a clue how I wanted to do it, to tell you the truth. Like in my mind, I'm like, oh, I'm gonna do like zebra stripes, or I'm gonna do like a rainbow, or I'm gonna do straight lines. And then I'm like, well, and next thing I knew, when I started pouring, I was kind of like on a diagonal. And so I just roll with it. Just do your thing, you know. Do your own design. The good thing is, like, when you add the mica and the glitter, it becomes really thick. So if you kind of mess up, you can kind of almost scoop it up. So it wouldn't be that easy to scoop it up if you were just using like clear epoxy with nothing mixed in it. But because of all the additives, if you do mess up, you kind of do have it's a little bit easier to get up. Especially since you're getting it off of like a silicone surface. You can like kind of scoop it up and then wipe it with alcohol really quick. So yeah, just do whatever your heart's desires when it comes to the design. You know, there's no rhyme or reason, there's no right or wrong. And you can see here I'm using that popsicle stick method to kind of push my the purple into place. And you can see like the silicone where I moved it from, there's really not much left on it. So if I needed to get it up, I could just take some alcohol and get it all up. So when I was looking at it, I'm like, oh, it needs something else. I just feel like it's missing something. Like, it already looks psychedelic. It looks really cool. And so I decided just to take my popsicle stick and kind of do like some marbling effect, kind of see what I could do with it. And so again, totally optional. Just be your creative self. And like on one end, I did it all in one direction. And you can see on this end, I'm going back and forth, alternating. the direction of the lines. Again, optional, up to you. Do what feels right. So this is the next day. It's been sitting out for a whole 24 hours. And so I'm just going to show you how to take it out the mold. And you guys, you can see as easy as you think I'm pulling it out the mold, that's how easy I'm pulling it out the mold. It comes off smooth, clean, and simple. So look, working with silicone is like a dream. And so I'm gonna just take a little bit of sandpaper and just run around the edges, just to make sure you don't have any kind of sharp edges or anything like that. So I always just take a little bit of fine sandpaper and just run it around the edge. Do not sand the surface of the cover, because if not, you'll end up having to put a new coat of epoxy on it. So just a tip. But yeah, just keep running your finger along and make sure you're comfortable with the way the edge feels. And so if you by chance got like a little bit of epoxy in the hole, what I do is I usually just take one of the rings that I'm going to use for the notebook, and I kind of just punch it through, and that usually will knock it loose, or loose enough for you to kind of just knock it away with your finger. So don't be worried if you get like a little bit of epoxy, or even if the whole hole is covered, you can usually just take the ring and just knock it through. And so that is the back cover. I love this back cover. All right, so this is how we're gonna do the front. And so I remembered that the calendar was on the back of the other side. So I'm gonna take this glitter from Nola Craft Culture. I'll put the name on the screen. And I'm gonna mix it with a little bit of titanium dioxide. And so titanium dioxide helps you achieve white if you're like mixing anything like for soap or epoxy, or if you're trying to lighten like a color that you have, like if you want to turn something pastel, you would use titanium dioxide. And so I decided to use the titanium dioxide to kind of give me a cloudy effect, because the glitter was going to be really pretty on its own, but I knew I couldn't pack it too tightly in the epoxy, because again, you pack it too tightly, you risk it kind of being lumpy. And so I wanted to put just enough titanium dioxide to kind of make it like off-white, to kind of make it hazy in the background, and then incorporate the glitter. That way when I put the picture on it, you wouldn't really be able to see the calendar too much in the background. So that was my goal, and that's why I did it like this. Again, all optional. If you don't care about the calendar showing in the inside of the notebook, it's not that big of a deal at all. But me, I really wanted to do this, and I really wanted to use this glitter because I don't think I've used this glitter on any projects yet. So I was kind of like itching to use it, and so I'm like, ooh, perfect project. So just mix that up really well. And then you're just gonna pour all of it in. Oh yeah, I didn't tell you guys how much epoxy I mixed. For each cover, for the front cover, I used 60 mils of each, so 120 mils total, I believe. Does that sound right? That doesn't sound right. I'll leave the mils that I used in the description box actually while I ponder it after I finish recording this audio. And so you're gonna just spread this out pretty evenly and pretty thinly, because remember, you're gonna stick the picture in, and then you're going to put a clear coat on top of that to seal it in. So make sure you do this even. You're gonna see where I messed up at, and I'll tell you where I messed up at But just make sure you get this down evenly. You see I'm actually taking some out because it was a little too thick and I knew I wouldn't be able to put the picture in and then put the clear coat on top. So just trying to be cognizant of that, kind of you want to fill it halfway. And so next I'm gonna just stick the picture in. And so kind of just lay it in there. And so I went around trying to push out all the air around the edge, and then I'm gonna go ahead and pour the clear, so this is just plain clear epoxy, there's nothing mixed in this, and pour that on top of the picture. And so this is what's gonna help encapsulate that picture inside of the cover. And so I'm just using my stick to kind of help work it around so I don't have to really use my finger too much. So just trying to use the popsicle stick to move the epoxy where I see there's not too much coverage at. And so the picture is gonna move when you're working it in. Just make sure when you're like done and you're like, okay, I'm done. Just make sure that you're satisfied with the placement. And you can see again, I'm picking some out because I mix too much epoxy, that's on me. But you don't need to like flood it out. And so you can see it as I'm moving it, I'm also pressing air out. So just make sure if it feels like, cause I could like look at it and actually see like there was like air. So I was trying to, when I was working the epoxy over the picture, trying to also push out the air where it felt like there was air in it. So now you see I'm pressing on the center. And remember that I pressed on the center because that's gonna be important in a minute. So this is the next day. I let it dry for 24 hours. And again, pops out the mold like a dream. And oh my goodness, you see I have this big hole in the center. That's probably from where I applied a little bit too much pressure and it pushed out the epoxy to the side. So that is on me. There is still a small layer of epoxy on there, which is good. So I know it won't, if it gets wet or anything, it'll be fine. But you can see it did its job as far as covering up that back calendar. So I was very happy with that fact that, you know, my plan for that did work out. But yeah, the next time I do an epoxy project, I'll just pour a little bit in there and let it sit for a day and all will be fine. So if that happens to you, don't be discouraged. You can always go back in and fill in any kind of voids after the fact. Don't think that you have to like scrap your whole project because, you know, it's DIY. Sometimes they work perfectly, sometimes they don't work perfectly, but they're all fixable, they're all salvageable, and there's always something you can do with whatever you choose to make. So again, sand it around the edges very lightly. And that is the cover. I am in love. And then like some of that glitter float around to the front. So I'm just so happy with it. So these are 1.5 inch binder rings. And so I usually would go with a 1 inch, but I wanted to use a 1.5 inch because I plan on making this a pretty big notebook. And this is just the paper set from Amazon. It's like $9. Doesn't come with the rings, but it comes with like all the paper you need. So those are how the two covers look. And so I have them laid right now where the back cover is facing, the outside of the covers are facing down. Okay, so I'm gonna just stick it in there. So the easiest way to do this, I found, is to lay the back cover and the stack of paper on there. And then once you get the stack of paper on there, take the front cover and put it through that first one. And so this will help you get the whole book aligned. And like, then you can just breeze through putting the other ones on because now they don't really have a place to go. So it's much easier now. All right, you guys, so this is the final cover, the final notebook. I am in love with it. It's bright, it's sunny, it's colorful, it's creative. So I'm in love with it. I hope you guys really enjoyed this tutorial. If you have any comments or questions, please leave them below. I hope you subscribe to the channel and join the Period 6 Designs family, and I will see you guys in the next one.